When we covered Zombie Month, we made sure to include Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's 2002 28 Days Later. Although, as we talked about then, it's not technically a zombie movie, as these are the infected.
Butter. Are you okay?
Infected with a virus that causes extreme rage that was lab leaked from an English biological lab. After a group of animal rights activists tried to liberate the chimpanzees who had been infected with the virus.
Listen, you sick bastard. We're going and we're taking your torture victims with us.
We're gonna get you out of here.
Listen, the animals are contagious. The infection is in their blood and saliva. One bite. Stop! Stop! You've no idea!
The infected are not the dead who have returned. They are infected with an extreme form of anger. That makes them super fast, super aggressive, throw up blood, like anyone who they see. As with any series of zombie films or horror films, the context and setting is really important to understanding the fears that the movie is playing on. Both 28 Days Later and the subsequent movies, including tonight's 28 Years Later, are set in the dystopian wasteland version of England. England's last few decades as a post-global empire, slowly giving up each of its former colonies. Watching countries like America and China that it formerly could dominate completely outpace it. In recent years especially, the news has not been good for the United Kingdom. An extreme dissatisfaction and continued economic downturn at the heart of the former empire fomented the drastic decision to leave the EU with Brexit.
He can't decide whether he's for leave or for remain. He's being held captive by his colleagues. The electorate are being held captive by this zombie parliament and this zombie opposition, and he wants the entire country to be held captive in the EU after October the 31st.
Isolating the United Kingdom from the mainland of Europe like never before. Like all of Europe, England is in the throes of extreme nativist revival, with anti-immigrant sentiment running rampant. Last year, 6 days of rioting against immigrants led to 1,280 arrests. 28 years later, a collaboration between Danny Boyle and Alex Garland for the first time since Sunshine stars Alfie Williams, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ralph Fiennes, and Jack O'Connell.
Stay really still. Go back to the trees.
28 years later is definitely influenced by the extreme rage and feeling in the United Kingdom right now. The British Isles have been quarantined from the rest of mainland Europe, with the virus kept out by naval patrols and guards, an inversion of the decision by UK voters to leave the EU. Instead, the EU has fortified itself against the contaminant that is the UK. Europe has returned to normalcy. They have technology, the internet, iPhones, DoorDash, whereas England has been thrown back at least to the 1800s. So much of the country, at least the bit we see, seems to be uninhabited, with only little tiny communities of survivors in the towns and villages. A group of survivors that section themselves off even further, living on Lindisfarne, a tidal island only reachable at low tide. It's 28 years into the outbreak, meaning that a whole generation now doesn't remember the time before. I'm struck thinking about 9/11 and Gen Z and how weird it feels to know that babies in the 2000s are fully adults now. It's a complete rejection of all community except the hyperlocal by necessity. And that's where we meet the 12-year-old Spike, played by Alfie Williams, who lives with his parents, Ilsa and Jamie. Jamie is one of those super masculine men who pushes too hard, deciding to take his 12-year-old son out into the wilderness on a coming-of-age hunt. Ilsa is sick and getting sicker, experiencing memory problems and fevers. After being brought into the mainland for the first time, Spike begins to inevitably become disenchanted by his father when he sees how he acts. He almost dies after an ambush by the infected gets out of hand. Spike begins piecing together things that his father has lied about and comes to the conclusion that in order to ensure his mom gets better, he must take her out there to find a doctor who Spike's dad has lied about existing. The one big rule in this community, if you leave you can come back, but they cannot look for you, slashing one lifeline to community. In one of the more interesting sequences, Spike and Ilsa are attacked and get rescued by Eric, a Swedish soldier who has been marooned onto England, meaning he cannot go back to Europe. Eric has an iPhone, talks about lip filler on his fiance, about the internet, and about DoorDash, while Spike stares back at him like he's time traveled to the 1600s and met a random peasant boy. We also learn about the existence of alpha infected, who've been infected with a special strain that basically makes their bodies interact like they're on steroids, adding a new kind of alpha strongman rage to the mix. The alpha can also direct large groups of the infected, and there's a mirror in both the survivors and infected needing to keep eating to survive, inevitably running into each other. The children of the infected are not necessarily infected either, adding a layer of ethical dilemma to future movies. The part with the alpha could also mirror Spike's relationship with an angry father whose love for his family is shown through aggression and protectiveness, and his mother as the woman giving birth temporarily changes into a docile creature, but is also fearsome as soon as that wears off. Although it's not confirmed that the alpha is the father of the child, or if the woman giving birth was infected while pregnant. The film was shot on both 70mm and large rigs with 20 iPhones that could film at the same time. The extra wide 70mm used to create vast, wide, desolate sequences, and the iPhones used to do the up-close, rapidly shot infected sequences, for which Danny Boyle said he wanted to do a poor man's bullet time.
Don't look at what's in front of you. Boost, 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 moving up and down again. Men go mad with watching them. There's no discharge in the war.
There are sequences within the film that I think are interesting and worth discussing. As Spike and Jamie run through the forest shooting arrows at the infected, a recording of the poem Boots by Rudyard Kipling is heard on the audio, which is written about a British soldier marching endlessly during the Second Boer War and the repetitive, monotonous thoughts in a soldier's head that he uses to keep time, with a slideshow of images like British soldiers marching off to war and shooting arrows in the past in mock battles, showing the regression back to an imagined historical period in a time of extreme upheaval. Spike and Jamie use bows and arrows, whereas the Swedish naval guy uses a machine gun. Ralph makes what I guess is being called an extended cameo as Dr. Kelson, a man who spent the entirety of this 30-year period alone and whose dedication to treating the infected with humanity has led him to create a giant never-ending tower of skulls. There, Spike must face the possibility of losing his mother, but with an actual doctor to try to guide her through it. A last character to touch on, the film starts 28 years earlier with the boy who escapes while his fundamentalist vicar father gets devoured yelling about Judgment Day. That character, Jimmy, matches the graffiti we see on houses and on the body of a man who has been hung and suffocated upside down. At the end, we get Jack O'Connell and a gang of guys who look very vampirish, to be honest. Remick from Sinners, all dressed like Jimmy Savile, the massive British pedophile children's entertainer, right before the movie fades to black. Anyway, the film cost $60 million to make.
If your eyes drop, they will get the top of you. Boost, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war.